Hello and welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you're watching the Arthritis show. Well, joining us today in our studios here in South Florida is Dr. Jose Sandoval. Welcome, Doctor.
Nice to meet you.
Great to have you. Doc, can you explain to our audience out there about your practice and
Sure.
yourself?
I'm a clinical psychologist. I consider myself an integrative practitioner because I also have certification by the board of the American Association of Drugless Practitioners in holistic lifestyle nutrition. So the work that I do traditionally incorporates conventional psychological means with holistic practices like nutrition, lifestyle, counseling.
Fantastic. To audience out there, integrative psychology is a very upcoming field now, and you basically don't, the concept here is you just don't address the tree, you address the whole forest.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, you have a very interesting website. I want to take the audience out there to straight to your website here to see some of these images. So, now, Radiance, full of radiance is your website? Fantastic. Now, let's go to this initial page. I think our director was wanted us to discuss some of the images that you have on your website. Now, you also have information about nutrition on your website.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the deal with this obesity? Why is it getting so common, Doc?
People aren't eating real food. That's the simplest explanation I can give you.
Accordingly, it's like 60 to 70% now, and now in 20 years, maybe reaching 100%.
Yes, absolutely. Many Americans eat processed foods, junk foods, fast foods. That's not food.
And a lot of sugar, right?
Absolutely. Sugar is the leading contributor to obesity in this country, in my opinion.
What is some of the methods that you would use if patients come to you trying to lose weight?
It really depends on the person because I don't believe there's any one dietary approach that works for everybody. That's what most dietary books don't tell you. You're reading through it. They don't say to you, if it doesn't work for you, you should reconsider this approach. So I work with patients to really figure out and discover what works for that person based on their life history, based on their medical history, based on their lifestyle now. So depending on everything that I gather, then I may make recommendations for the person to adopt.
Fantastic. Now, what is the recommendation right now for calorie intake of a typical man in their 70s?
Again, it depends on lifestyle. You find many people who are 70 and are still quite active, and if they're very active, then calories, and it really depends on the type of calories. Another misnomer, in my opinion, is that a calorie is a calorie. A calorie from a can of soda is the same as a calorie from a piece of broccoli. That's absolutely not true. Something that's new in the field of nutrition that I'm really excited about is something that's known as nutrigenomics, or epigenetics in the field of food. It just means that food actually speaks to and communicates with your genes. So that can of soda is going to communicate with your genes to regulate, and the expression of disease-promoting genes are turned on, while as the disease-promoting genes that are turned off normally by eating real food, that's suppressed. So a calorie is not a calorie. So to answer your question, how many calories does a 70-year-old man? It depends on their lifestyle. It depends on where they're getting their calories. A couple of pounds of raw veggies, that's going to have a few hundred calories, maybe. A couple of pounds of Doritos, Cheetos, a few thousand calories. So again, where's the calorie coming from?
So measuring the calories is a key thing for some of the audience out there who are trying to lose their weight, right?
No, based on what I'm saying, it's where the calories are coming from, what food you're eating. Not a calorie is not a calorie. So 100 calories from a can of soda is not the same thing as 100 calories from several pounds of broccoli.
Okay. And so let's say some of our audience would ask you, okay, is it more harmful for me to have several calories from broccoli versus same amount of calories from a can of soda? You would say that
the can of soda will kill you.
Would be much worse.
Yes.
Because it's the wrong calorie.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, what about this commotion in New York, especially, that they're doing about banning the sodas.
I think that's a good move by Mayor Bloomberg. I just don't know that it's going to stop people from drinking soda because it's very addictive, and sugar is very addictive. It literally is a drug. It was originally imported from Europe in the 14th century, and when it was sold originally in France, it was sold in apothecaries, old drugstores, what we now consider like your CVS or Walgreens. That's where you find it, and you had to ask for it as crack. That tells you about sugar.
That was what sugar was called.
Yeah, that's the origins of sugar. It was imported from Europe, brought to this country, and now the average American consumes about 200 pounds of sugar per year. Beginning of the 20th century, the average American consumed about 25 pounds of sugar a year.
A day or a year?
A year.
Okay, and Roman Garcia, you had a question for Doc?
Yes, Doctor. Dr. Sandoval, you used a word there that's fairly new in genomics, which is epigenetic.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what exactly that means for folks out there who are watching?
Epigenetics, again, is just the regulation of gene expressions. So it's not the genes that I inherit from my parents. It's how those genes interact in my body with the whole system, and these genes are influenced by my lifestyle. So how I eat, how active I am, if I'm outdoors getting sun, if I'm not, if I'm breathing fresh air, if I'm making contact with the ground and the earth. All those factors influence the expression of genes. So epigenetics is more about the expression of genes, not just the genes that we inherit.
So in essence, if you eat bad genes are going to be expressed.
Absolutely.
And that's basically what it comes down to. You eat good foods, good genes are going to be expressed.
And the bad genes are going to be suppressed.
Exactly. Now, is there a particular psychological profile associated with individuals who have bad eating habits? Is there a pattern?
I think when we're speaking about food and food addictions, typically it's used by the person who's eating, or as you said, who has a bad eating pattern for emotional reasons, a way to cope with difficult emotions. So the person who has a boss at work who is very, very demanding, and they come home at the end of the night because they're frustrated and stressed out with their job situation, that person is going to be more likely to go to the fridge, eat the ice cream that's in the freezer. That person, we can say, has an eating disorder, but maybe it's just because of the job. So the profile is how you deal with your emotions, and dealing with emotions in a more effective way that's healthier for you.
So would that be one of the strategies that you would use? You would deal first with the emotional distraught before you do anything about educating the individual about proper eating habits?
Not first. You know, it's a fluid. I would describe the way that I work as more fluid. So both are important, dealing with the emotions, helping the person to cope more effectively, and educating the person about the best foods for their body.
And are people aware that they are not eating properly and they just cannot help themselves because of this sugar craving? Do you find that that is so?
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think most people rely on TV and the websites that are available for anyone. Anyone can go to Google and you have a bunch of experts who will tell you about what you should eat. And these people, they don't really care about you. You know, and many of these experts on TV are really just paid spokespersons for the drug companies, because the food industry and the drug industry, they're married, in my opinion.
So are you saying that so-called experts are promoting certain products for political reasons, for personal gains? Is that basically what
I wouldn't go as far as promoting for personal reasons. I just think it's part of a bigger system. I'll put it to you this way. 19% of this country's GDP is the healthcare industry. 21% of this country's GDP is the food industry. If you think that's a coincidence, you know, I think I won't place a judgment, but I don't believe that's a coincidence. Many of the food industry giants in this country and the healthcare industry giants, they're owned by the same CEOs or the same companies.
So in your opinion, these bad eating habits that our Americans are expressing, it is a primary result of bad information they're getting?
Yes. Misinformation.
Misinformation.
And the lack of more readily available information that can actually help someone in a sound way.
And if somebody's trying to change their eating behavior and they see, for example, they see themselves in the mirror and they don't like what they see, what's facing back to them, the image that's facing back, what is the first step that that individual should do to try to change that pattern of eating? Is there something they can do first?
It really depends on the person's particular situation, so I wouldn't feel comfortable making a recommendation that just is a broad stroke for everybody, because it really depends on what the person is experiencing. What I would say, though, is how is the person coping with the emotions that they're experiencing? Many people resort to unhealthy coping behaviors, such as food, to deal with their emotions, like the sadness or the stress from a stressful situation at work, for example, or a problematic relationship that they have.
I understand.
Well, I just wanted to make one final note on the sugar that you mentioned, and with arthritis, as you know, sugar is not a good thing for arthritis, and that's something we highly recommend to our patients to stay away from sugar. And I just wanted to add that because of our show and how we talk about arthritis. Yes, sir.
One more question for Dr. Sandoval. Doctor, you say that obviously not all calories are the same. The calorie that comes from a cookie is very different molecularly from a calorie that comes from a broccoli. Is there such a thing as a healthy sugar? Because obviously strawberries, bananas, fruits, they have sugar, but those sugars molecularly are very different from something that you will acquire from a cookie.
Yes, I think there are many sugars that are good for you. It's real simple. Eat real food. And I use that term not lightly to say that if it's in a box, if it's in a package, if it has more than 5 ingredients, it's not real food.
Of course.
If it comes from a restaurant, a chain restaurant, fast food joint, it's not real food. People don't want to know about the food and how it's processed in this country, in my opinion. There's many films and documentaries are available for people to educate themselves that give you an inside preview, or inside look, I should say, into how food is produced in this country. The food giants and the biotech companies don't want you to know that. Food Inc., for example, is a popular food documentary that was released 4 years ago that many people saw. It was nominated for an Oscar. It didn't win the Oscar, again, because I think of the controversy that if more people knew how food is raised in this country, fewer people would buy the food in the grocery stores.
So in essence, anytime that somebody watches a so-called profession on television, they need to be careful because there may be a hidden agenda behind that individual's recommendations.
Yeah, and always consider the source, in my opinion, and do your homework.
Of course.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right about this conspiracy that's going on, because when there's a lot of money, there's usually a conspiracy fund. And this has been going on for some time. For example, best example is McDonald's, how they've been brainwashing people by introducing them to Ronald McDonald or introducing them to those games that they have. They just train and groom these children that are growing up to become, yes, Scott.
No, I definitely agree with many of the things that you're saying. I wouldn't say that it's a conspiracy, though. I think it's much simpler. Money talks, so follow the money. These companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. They don't want to lose the money.
No.
For example, a few weeks ago, there was Proposition 37 in California to label genetically modified organisms, which most Americans are eating. They don't even know about that. It was defeated. Why? Because the big food giants put in over $50 billion to defeat Proposition 37.
There you go. Which basically takes you back, I was saying, the conspiracy. That becomes kind of a conspiracy. Yes,
it's quite interesting how they were able to defeat that proposition, considering that California, they're so health conscious.
Yes, and it's interesting to find out after the ballot poll that many of the votes, most of the votes, were not counted. So who knows? Maybe it did pass. We just don't know.
No.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, audience out there. This is all the time that we have today. I wanted to take a moment and thank Dr. Sandoval. Dr. Sandoval, thank you for coming again. We'd love to have you again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Make sure you join us for our Wednesday show. We're going to bring you the latest on arthritis and sports injuries. Have a great day.